I'm going to talk about the journey, right? So I think a lot of people, my dad was an Olympic coach. A lot of people had this idea of me as I grew up shooting and throwing hezzies, which is a water polo term, in the bathtub. But I didn't. It was the 96 Olympics. I played multiple sports. My grandfather played for Bear Bryant, football. And it was at the 96 Olympics that I got to be a ball boy, and I got to sit on the bench of the Spanish team in the gold medal game. Game changer for me. Watching the game, intense, just sitting there as a young 14-year-old, watching everything, and there's about 30 seconds left to go, and all of a sudden I see the Spaniards just start hugging, they start kissing each other, which for me as an American, I'm like, what's going on? But for the Spaniards, it was totally normal. And they win, the buzzer goes off, and thousands of Spaniards just rush the pool. And, that was when the security wasn't as great as it is now, and there's like 6 security guards, and there's thousands of Spaniards in the pool, and you can see them all cheering. It was pretty amazing. But it was at that point, I still get goosebumps, and I told my dad, I finished that games, and I go and I say, I want to be an Olympian. I want to go to the next Olympics in Sydney. And my dad, he's a great guy. Again, we're Brazilian, really happy dude, but he looks at me and he goes, look, you're short, you're chubby, and you're slow. So we got a lot to work on, right? So why that was the most important moment in my life, because I think I started understanding what it took to be great. So I sat down and we set goals, right? Starting with little goals. All I wanted at the beginning was to be on varsity, right? But the goal setting we did was really interesting. It was, all right, let's get on varsity, but let's try to break 5 seconds. And then after varsity, everyone does this thing called off season where they take time off. No, use that to get better than everyone else out there. And so I did that. And then the summer come and I get cut from the first youth team, and then I go do it again. And now sophomore year comes along, pretty good again. Finished sophomore year, okay, where am I at? Joined a swim team, which was the worst thing ever. If you saw me swimming out there, I'm like a manatee, just trying to float. I have no interest in swimming anymore. But that was the toughest part, because swimming is a very different sport than water polo. And in the next year, fast forward 2.5 years later, I'm now a junior in high school. We finish our junior year. I'm a MVP of that junior year. We've won 3 national championships in high school, and I get invited to the national team. Now, in 2.5 years, one thing I didn't mention, I had the 3 things that we talked about. I had to get stronger. I couldn't work on my height, so I had to get quicker, stronger, faster, and get more fit. All I did with more fitness was take out fast food and soda. I was a kid, never ate dessert, so that was easy for me, but I took off all fast food and soda. That was the only thing I did in high school. Right? I ate normally like everyone else, real food, but that massively helped me, staying hydrated. Second was strength. I woke up freshman year, 5 a.m. for 3 years in a row. 5 a.m., 5:30 to 6:30 a.m. I trained with a 4-time Olympic gold medalist, Misty May, and we would go to the gym and train 6 days a week before school, because I needed to graduate early if I had my aspirations of making that team and going on to Stanford, which was my dream at that point. 2.5 years later, I end up putting on 30 pounds. I'm now 180 pounds. I'm fit, and I make the national team. I'm now going a 48 in the 100 freestyle instead of a minute 3 seconds, which is a 15-second drop, which in the world of swimming is not an easy one. So the dream came true, right? I made my first Olympic team. And, I can remember walking through those opening ceremonies, guys. We walked in, so the water polo players, we always it's a long journey. People don't talk about opening ceremonies. You're on your feet for 2 hours walking, which for some sports is easy. For water polo, it's not easy. So we're like sitting in the back, and then right before we walk in, all the NBA players come. So I have Jason Kidd and Tim Duncan right next to my side walking in with me, and to see their eyes and how perplexed and amazed they were at walking into opening ceremonies just put everything in perspective. Like, of course it is going to be for me, as well as the food hall, because that was, there was everything you can imagine. There was a Japanese station, at sushi, you could have everything. So very easy to put on weight in that place. After that, I got a full ride to Stanford University. Ended up playing there 4 years. Won the Heisman Trophy, which is the equivalent, or the Heisman Trophy, which is we call in water polo the Catino Award, all 4 years. No one's ever done that. And then I got to go play after that. The way it works in water polo is, post school, you either go to school, or if you have to continue with the national team, you have to go play overseas. So I signed a 3.5-year contract, the biggest contract at that point. Super excited. Showed up halfway through my senior year. We finished, we won. We went on January. My team had already been playing. We were 9th in the country in all of Italy. And I showed up in a center. And, think of basketball center, that bigger player was injured. So I had to take on different roles, and we'll kind of talk about that a little later. So I took on the role of center. I was one that I started as a center, even though I'm smaller. Centers, by the way, they're about 6'8", 300 pounds. That's what we're talking about. So when I say I'm small, I was the smallest player in 4 of my 5 Olympic Games. So I'm 6'1". Usually I'm standing next to a 6'7" left-hander from Croatia. So this was interesting. So I go over there. We start 9th. We finish the season 4 months later. We're 4th. We achieved our dream, which was going to Champions Cup. So the next year we were going to be in Champions Cup. So we have a nice dinner out, all of us, and the manager pulls me aside and he goes, Tony, great meeting you, but I'm not going to pay you your full salary, and I'm going to break your contract. I'm like, why? And he says, you're here to score goals, and you didn't score goals. So it is what it is. So I go home devastated. My whole life was, I had it planned, right? I'm going to make this first Olympic team. I'm going to crush it at Stanford. I'm going to go live overseas and, win that gold medal. Well, now, if I can't succeed in Europe, you can't play water polo. You can't. You can't work here half part-time while the rest of the world's going all out. And 2 months later, I'm training for the World Championships, and I get a call from that president. And he says, can I talk to you? And I'm like, sure, what's up? And he goes, I just want to apologize. I'm like, yeah. He's like, did you sign anywhere else? I'm like, I do have a couple offers, and I'm looking for Naples, Italy, which was Posillipo, one of the better teams. And he said, we want you. I'll pay you everything right now. I'll pay you in advance for the next year. We want you. And I go, why? Like, what happened? The way you treated me, why am I coming back? He said, Tony, our coach, who was a famous coach at that point, our captain, who just is the Olympic coach now in the Hungarian, just won gold medal at the World Championships, and the best player on the team said they would not return if I wasn't on that team. So I ended up going back. I ended up going and playing in Croatia, Montenegro. My son was born in Croatia. Ended up finishing my career in Brazil with the 2016 Olympic Games, and then also the professional part of it. And then got my master's at Harvard during that time. And that was it. 2017, I decided to retire. So, now at this point, right, I've built this resume. Okay, so like we said, 4-time all-leading scorer, Pac-12 athlete of the century when the Pac-12 was something with all the sports. All-time leading scorer for world championships, all-time leading scorer for college. So there's a lot of stuff that I left. I talked about the Catino Awards, but the water polo, again, I mentioned this before, has 2 ways. You go into sport, you become a coach. And if you're a coach, your passion is your team. And that's great. I love that. And most of my best friends are coaches, and their passion is their team. But the team's not going to change the sport. You're going to be focused on your team. And even if you want to change the sport, everyone else doesn't like you because you're that competing coach on that UCLA team or Stanford team or whatever. So then I had a lot of opportunities to get out of the water polo world, to get in the business world, which was also intriguing because I have a lot of connections through school and through the years playing abroad. But it was at this moment where I realized I got to figure out a way. So my lovely wife, talked to her, who also had a lot of opportunities, and we decided, you know what, give me a year. This year I traveled the world, you guys. I took the kids. We went to New Zealand, South Africa, all over Europe, Asia. And the whole idea with this was what does our sport need, right? Someone's got to be doing something for the sport because there's nothing out there. So we identified 3 things that separated our sport, that really separated our sport from all the successful sports, and that it was lacking. The first is lack of data, right? So you take myself, 5-time Olympian, right? Won everything pretty much since I was, 14 years old, but no one knows anything about me. There's no data collection. No one can tell a story. And in sport, you look at players, Kobe Bryant. You can say, how did that guy, I'm a Laker guy, sorry. So how did that guy succeed? Well, Kobe grew up in Italy. This is the team he played for. These are the drills they do in Italy, right? Then he came home, and this is how high he jumped. This is how fast he ran. So there were all this data for an athlete, an NBA player going, if I want to be like him, what do I have to do? Well, there's tons of stuff. Now, if they want to be like me, no idea. You got to go be born in Brazil or something. Like, no one knows. There's no story. And then you ask my dad, and he'll come up with a different story every time. So data, lack of data. You can't go anywhere if you don't have data. Lack of coaching materials. I think this is important because coaches don't have the right materials in our sport, which means athletes don't have the right fundamentals. That's just where it's at. In Europe has the model in our sport, and they've just succeeded over and over and over. Why? Because they don't go to universities a lot of times, and when they finish, their top players all become coaches. And what do those top players teach those coaches? The correct fundamentals, right? Now, the United States is massive. We're the biggest water polo. We're massive, of course, but in sports, there's no comparison to us compared to the rest of the world. But we don't have that. We have a couple that stick around, maybe in Southern California, Northern California. But most of the time, it's a coach, it's a parent. And how many times I take my kid to AYSO, hey, what's your, where did you play soccer? Oh, AYSO 30 years ago. That's who's coaching my kid, right? And that's happening. That's all over the sports. That's all Olympic sports where these kids, or even some of the top sports, they're getting coached by parents instead of getting coached by someone or a parent who at least has the right material to teach those kids the right fundamentals. And that's why they're succeeding and we keep falling behind, right? A country like Croatia, or Montenegro, that's this big compared to us, they have a 95% success rate, meaning all those countries, all those athletes are successful, and even the lower level ones can play here. We have 100,000 water polo players, and 2% of them are at that high level. Now we just won the bronze. Our women are one of the best, but still, imagine if we could get 10% of them. The last is what we call the combine. Right, the objective testing. Obviously, schools have SATs. Major sports have combines. There's a reason. It doesn't say you're the smartest because you have a better SAT. It doesn't say he's the best player because he has a combine. It says, this is about where they stand, and this is what they need to work on, right? Was it math? Was it history? And in the sporting world, is it, your leg strength? And this ended up becoming the key because this is the one where now I could get a kid from Kansas, or I'm going to tell you a quick story about a girl from Connecticut who went to a camp blocking. Can I block the boys? I'm like, ooh, I don't know liability-wise if that's good. She's like, no, I'm good. Blocks everyone. Just zero coaching, but tons of passion. Comes to us. We have an academy. Comes to us for 2 years. She now just won MVP of NC2A, won NC2As as the starting goalie for UCLA. And it was all because she understood, you're here. She would work on her own. I need legs, I need flexibility, I need all these things because she saw it on the combine, on the testing. And then she came out and gave herself the proper training, and she will be on the next Olympic team. So, 6-8 sports. So, quick story on that, because I want to introduce how we started. So I just told you I traveled the world, trying to understand what the sport needed, trying to keep myself in the sport and not leaving. I did a camp, 2016, right when I retired, I did this camp, or about when I was going to retire, and Maggie Steffens. At that time, she was a one-time gold medalist. Maggie Steffens is now a 4-time Olympian, 3-time gold medalist, captain of the women's Olympic team, the greatest women's water polo to ever play. So she gives this speech at our camp, and this little girl raises her hand and goes, "Maggie, how did you choose number 6? And I thought she started turning bright red. I thought she was going to just attack the girl. "You don't choose your number. You earn your number. I would have been whatever number that was given to me on the Olympic team." And I remember that. I grew up number 5. I wanted to be number 5. I still have long hair from my idol, Manuel Estiardi. He was the only 6-time Olympian in the sport. He had long hair. I wanted 5, but then they gave me 8. Well, I'm going to make 8 great. They gave her 6. She's going to make 6 great. And at that camp, earn your number was her motto. From that point on, Maggie and I had multiple meetings, multiple talks. We were on the same page. And once the boss, Sarah, said okay, we created 6-8 Sports, which is 6 her number, 8 my number, with the same vision to make sure to get data, to grow the sport, to help coaches, and to create the combine. So just briefly to talk about what we have, right? So we've been lucky enough. So 6-8 right now is a thriving tech company. We're powered by LeverX. They've been a huge part of who we are today. Just guidance and role modeling as an athlete coming out, trying to learn this world. We have, with this game desk. So you got the game desk, which is that iPad type. That is meant for coaches and GB. That is live tracking. That is exposure, right? For kids all over the world. How do I get exposed? Well, they're getting exposed because that can be an iPad, that can be your phone, that can be a computer, doesn't need Wi-Fi. Wherever you are, you're tracking, so now we got the data, right? We have the data, we have the analytics, and also this is a way that coaches can send workouts to their athletes. The second is the mobile app. The mobile app is a way that athletes receive their data. They receive what they did well and what they did wrong, so they can objectively look and say, this is where I'm at on the challenge, or this is where I'm at after a game, and this is where I should be, and this is how I improve, right? That's something that, again, doesn't exist, and it's something that's been a huge help for families and athletes improving their game. The last is the combine, right? We have 6 water polo specific challenges. They go through it. The minute it's done and recorded, it is uploaded by LeverX, and now every single athlete gets that on their phone with, again, a result, yellow, red, green. Where do they need to improve? Where are they top? Where are they ranked in the world? Where are they ranked globally in their zip code? And what's been great about that is, how do you get a kid to work harder on legs, right? Well, hey, you're ranked number 62. If you're 30 more, you're close to that guy, and you're not in the mecca of water polo, let's just say. So it's a way of inspiration for a lot of these athletes. So that is what we have now. Obviously, there's a lot more. But the connection, the key to us is this connection between the game desk and the mobile app. That right now doesn't happen. Everything happening on one, because you can have competition. I've seen other sports. Baseball has a lot of the mobile app stuff that you guys see. A lot of sports have the mobile app stuff that you see, but nothing's connecting all of it. There's not that circle of, hey, start on the game desk, get the data here at a game, all of a sudden shoot that into your phone, and now all of a sudden college recruits are asking, hey, what are your stats? Where are you at? Calling me, hey, this kid looks amazing compared to what he's doing. Can you verify that? I'm like, everything that goes on there is verified. That's the truth. Boom, that kid gets picked up at Stanford. We have 86 kids just in the last 3 years that infiltrate all D1 water polo, including Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Cal, UCLA, USC. So, something that I wanted to talk about today, because I don't know. When I set goals, I never, ever had the goal to be a captain. That was never a goal. I don't know why. I just never grew up wanting to be team captain. But everywhere I went, I was chosen team captain. Sanford, I show up, I'm 18 years old, everyone's, it's juniors, seniors, always they end up being captain. They asked me to be captain. Show up to the national team. I'm 22 years old, only a one-time Olympian. Most of the teams in their late 20s, early 30s, there was a 36-year-old on that team. I'm the second youngest on the team. When they choose captains, I'm the captain, right? Something that I never thought of. And I go back and think about it, like, why me, right? I was good, but that's not the reason to be captain. And, when I ask these teammates, I truly believe there are two characteristics that I believe in life that's so successful, especially here, is humility and confidence, right? You need confidence to believe in yourself, to go out there and make the decision that you believe is right, to go out there and do. But you need humility to listen and learn. And if you have too much of one, then you're just gonna be that, that puppet, because you're never gonna have the confidence. But if you have too much confidence, that equals ego, and you're not learning and listening. And I truly believe I found that balance. And it would always change depending on the player, on the team. But that was such a huge moment for me, is that balance. And how do you change a sport that doesn't want to be changed, which is so true. I mean, you think LeverX and I created, and 6-8 Sports created this. This does not exist in the world, and water polo is going to be so stoked. No. They don't want change. Change is hard, right? And I couldn't believe it at first. But I understood it. And as I'm sitting there thinking about what is happening here, how is we're giving them something so amazing that could just this change and help those numbers and help the quality. How's it not working? And I go back to, again, those days of being captain, right? And, how many players did I play with that didn't want to get better or didn't think they wanted to get better? Those are things that were really important that I thought about during this whole process. And that's when, and I'm going to give you a story, when I started thinking about this one player. So this one player on our team, which I'm not going to mention his name, even though I'd love to, is a great player, young, talented, but the guy just went through the motions. Every single practice, he'd show up, he'd do the minimum amount of work, he wouldn't swim hard, he wouldn't lift. The moment practice ended, he left. He didn't want to be anywhere part of the team. Now, he was very good, very good. Not the top, but he was very good. And in a team, you can't just say, hey, the top's going to run it. It's not going to work. You're just as important. That guy who's last on the bench is just as important as the top guy. And that's what teams function, right? And how am I going to get this guy motivated? I tried everything, you guys. I was so good. And with most people, I understood, hey, that guy I can yell at, I can call him every name in the book, and that'll motivate him. This guy I needed to coddle a little more. How do I motivate this guy? And I'll never forget, it was Budapest. We're playing chess and drinking their famous red wine, and from Ager, I think the wine was. And all of a sudden, we connected. And as we connected, that was just the first time I was like, okay, I was going out of my box, trying to understand all the teammates, especially this one. And now I understood how to talk to him. Now we'd have a nightly chess. Now we'd have nightly. And what I and the team perceived as this ego maniac that all of us were thinking in our minds, we're going to have to get this kid kicked off the team, was just a massive insecurity, right? But because I took the time and not cut the guy or tell us the team doesn't like him and just realize this guy's super insecure, well, how do you change that? Well, just change the way you speak to him. Be super positive, right? If there is something you need to change it in a positive way. Tell him how good he is. Changed everything. This player, which we knew was either going to be our downfall or one of the reasons we win, was the reason that we beat Serbia in that semifinal, which is a country we had never beaten since it exists as a country, to go into the gold medal game and lose against Hungary, but win that silver medal. And so each player responds differently, and I needed to understand that. And what I look at now, fast forward to water polo now, as a businessman, I've really been able to take these same techniques and apply them that I learned as captain, right? Taking the time and really understanding what these federations, what these clubs, what these coaches, why don't they want to change? Understanding them, and then using that same approach to getting them on board, to getting them to trust, and to getting them to change and break old habits. And right now, we have 9 different countries that are partnered with us. So teamwork. So look, this is one of the last slides. Teamwork, I think, is really been the big thing for us at 6'8", bringing in a lot of water polo people, helping them understand tech, understanding that, look, we're a growing company, obviously financially, you're not coming in making tons of money, but one of the biggest things about teamwork is it's not normal to be a team player. And think about that. And think about you're at work and your colleague is crushing it and you're next to him going like, yay, good. No, dude, you're like, what the hell? I'm going to do better. I mean, you get to where you are by beating your peers, by being you, by saying, I'm not listening to you, I'm going to be who I'm going to be, right? That guy's better, I'm going to beat that guy. And that's fine. And that's the same in sports, same in business. That's what's it about. The problem is, that's not going to make a team. You can't have a bunch of individuals crushing it on their own unless they understand that they're going to be more successful with a successful team around them. So one thing, and I'm going to give, again, a personal example to that, was my last 3 Olympics. Now I was named best player in the world in 2008. No one wants to criticize me. We're watching videos for an hour and a half. We're criticizing every player out there and not me. And I'm watching and listening, but I can see the tension now of the team. Oh, you've now separated me here as the captain, the boss, the leader, and everyone else here. So I remember going to the coach and saying, you can't do that anymore. You have to criticize me. And if anything, criticize me more. Because if you criticize me more, I promise you, coach, all these guys, they're going to follow. They're going to follow me. They're going to follow the team because if they look at me taking responsibility, apologizing, and learning from mistakes, you guys, then it's easy. They have to do it. But if I don't ever wrong, which in a sport you're always making mistakes, then why? Then it's bias, right? Then they're just going to say, hey, coach, why don't you yell at him or why don't you yell at him? And we did that, and it changed everything. Now, all of a sudden, these players who, have the fear of making mistakes, looking bad, being judged, these are not just things of athletes, you guys. This is in general people, right? Talk to so many kids, and this is it, because we live in a life where coaches yell at you, and if you don't do grades, you get yelled at. Of course you're afraid to make mistakes, to look bad, right? Of course. How do you change that, right? And then you grow up, and really your biggest fear to success is your biggest barrier, or the biggest barrier to success is your fear of failure. And I love that quote because it's so true. It's life. Hey, you know what? You're going to make mistakes. Just go out there, and it's okay, and we're going to fix that. But in order for them to feel that, they need to have a leader that they feel that is on their side, that's not going to cut them, that's not going to, that's going to give them a chance, it's going to listen. And I do believe here that if you're the leader willing to listen and learn, you become easier to approach. And if you're easier to approach, your teammates don't feel like they're walking on eggshells. They have the courage to take the risks, to ask questions, and to ask for help. And once that culture is built, then the sky's the limit. So where we're at now, right? We've had, again, COVID shut down for a year and a half. We did a lot of online stuff, but we did a lot of trainings virtually for the kids. But essentially, we have 36,000 people from 22 countries who have gone through the 6'8 challenge. We have partnerships with the top high school programs in the country, MPSF, which is the highest water polo organization. We have USA Water Polo, which is by far the biggest NGB in the world. We are in talks, had a call last week with Benfica Soccer, which is, again, I know this is going to succeed in other sports, especially I've had talks with Paul Rabel with lacrosse, with field hockey, because this is happening all over Olympic sports, and it's the same thing. But I didn't think that that hockey and football or soccer would have similar issues, right? And talking to them and understanding that connection with stats and immediate on your phone reflection, what do you need to do, where you're at now, is something they're all interested in. And so to finish, right, I think, look at that, 130, look at that, Frank, right there. Look, some I wrote, but I totally think, and I say it all the time to the team, is, in the tech world, things change so quickly and adapt, things are changing and adapting so quickly that I love it. I love it. I'm constantly thinking of new ideas, but just like in a game, I got to make that call and make it to the best of my ability, right? But I truly believe, and that's where I'm at, and I love that, but I do believe, but like an Olympic cycle, it's the daily grind and culture you create that will help you accomplish your ultimate dreams. And to me, a successful business and what we're doing now, and a successful team 100% is not about that one win. It's about the grind and the culture that will create great human beings surrounded by you and hopefully later on in life. So thank you guys for listening to a water polo story. Have a great weekend.
So that was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before you go, I love your talk about fear being your biggest barrier to success. And we see that in business all the time, that people want to get paid, people want to hit their quota, they want to do what they were hired to do, and they don't really go anywhere. And I understand that. But having this culture where it's okay to fail sometimes, where it's okay for you not to reach your goals, whatever the case may be, that varies from country to country. So in Silicon Valley, for example, there is a culture where it's okay to fail. And we'll celebrate the failure, we'll learn from it, and we'll move on to the next thing. But in other cultures, that's not always the case. How can global business leaders here and online, how can they start to embrace the idea that, failure is okay if we're learning and developing?
Yeah, well, to me, I think they can just look at Silicon Valley as a model, right? The failure of somebody wasn't, we look at failure looks like this terrible word, but failure that means someone had an idea and went all in on that idea. And that idea didn't work, but that doesn't mean that idea is wrong. And that idea probably has some things in that idea that are going to be super successful later on that's now going to make Silicon Valley even more popular, because that failed idea made everyone recognize that there's something else out there. So I think globally, if you're looking at that, you're looking at the ones that are successful saying, guys, they're doing this, but they're failing 30 times compared to our 0. But those 30 failures are helping them understand the whole big picture way more than us who's not even failing.